He killed her, and to cover it up, to get rid of the main piece of evidence, he put her body through a wood chipper. Police would eventually find pieces of human flesh all along the shore, uncovering the dark truth. I didn't watch the Bears game today because my boyfriend's out of town, but I just looked up the final score. It's too late for me to change now. Being a Bears fan is painful, okay? But that's not the point. This story takes place in the 1980s, by the way. Helle Nielsen was born in a small town in Denmark. Since she was a little girl, she was always very ambitious. No dream was too big. No goal was too far-fetched. She was always up for an adventure, and she wanted to accomplish and see as much of the world as she could while she was here on this earth. She lived in her small town in Denmark. She moved to the UK and studied there for a while. Then she moved to Paris, worked there for a little bit before she eventually returned home. When she was back at home, she decided that the perfect job that would allow her to work while keeping the adventures side of her life would be working as a flight attendant. She applied and got the job working for Capital Airways, and she was over the moon. She fit right in. She was absolutely adored by all the people she worked with. She was really excited to get started, and she felt really lucky to be in the position that she found herself in. When Helle was around 22 years old, she found herself in Miami for work, which is when she met Richard Crafts. Richard was in his early 30s. He was originally from New York. He was an ex-Marine, and he flew planes for the Marines. He was now just a regular pilot, I think. He was in Miami for the same flight training course that Helle was at, which is where they met. They hit it off immediately, although Richard had been in this bachelor mindset, living the single life, dating around for years, and he knew that he really liked Helle, and Helle really liked him, but they had to work through his commitment issues. Richard kind of wanted to have his cake and eat it. It took 6 years for him to be ready to settle down, and finally in 1975, the couple got married. They bought a house and settled down in Connecticut. Helle was also pregnant. I think that she was pregnant before they got married, so maybe that played a part in it as well. Regardless, they were now starting this new life together. They went on to have 3 kids together, and from the outside looking in, they had it all. Both Helle and Richard were very successful and happy in their jobs. The kids were happy, they were happy, it was all good. But we know that everything isn't always what it looks like, and in this case, it definitely was not. Richard was not a kind man to Helle. He would put her down, he would yell at her, he would call her names, manipulate her, he would make her feel this big. He would rely on her financially. Even though he was making more money, he wanted Helle's money to cover everything that had to do with their life. The mortgage, the groceries, the bills, everything for the kids. He expected her to pay for everything, and he would keep all of his money to himself. And Helle wouldn't really talk about it, the way that he treated her emotionally and financially. It all happened behind closed doors, and it eventually turned into something physical. Helle's friends would start to notice that Helle always had bruises on her. They would ask her about it, but she would just kind of brush it off. On top of that, Richard also had an apartment in New York. I think it's kind of safe to say that he would use that apartment to spend time with other women, because when he would go to New York, he wouldn't tell anyone. He would just kind of go and be there for a few days and not say anything about it. Around 1984, Richard was diagnosed with cancer, and his survival rate was actually pretty low. Helle devoted her entire life to care for Richard in any way that she could. She would care for him 24/7, did anything that not only he needed, but also anything he wanted. She got a second job to help with the expenses. She was doing everything for Richard because she wanted to. She was very caring, very loving, and she was just such a sweet lady. All while still working 2 jobs, taking care of 3 kids, keeping up with all of the bills. She had a lot on her plate. And 2 years later, Richard's cancer went away, which was great, but you would think that that would kind of be like a wake-up call for him. It would open his eyes, and he would realize how lucky he was to have such a loving, caring wife, but that was actually the opposite. Because as soon as his cancer went away, he was somehow treating Helle 10 times worse than he was before. Richard treated Helle with 0 respect, and on top of that, she had reasons to suspect that he was not being loyal. So Helle went out, she found a divorce lawyer. She couldn't live like this anymore. It was draining her emotionally and physical. It was too much. She also hired a private investigator who took no time to get photo evidence that he was in fact having an affair. Helle confronts Richard. She says, "I know you're cheating on me. You're horrible. I am done. We are getting a divorce." And Richard in return makes up this big fat lie that his cancer came back, that he's gonna die, and that he is okay with dying because if his wife is gonna leave him, he doesn't want to live anymore anyway. So Helle thinks, oh, how convenient. She calls the cancer doctor behind his back, who says, no, as far as I know, he has not had cancer in years. He was just trying to manipulate her into staying, and it was not gonna work. Helle was gonna go through with filing for divorce. On November 15th of 1986, 39-year-old Helle was going away on a trip for her job as a flight attendant, and it was on that trip when she confided in her coworkers about the divorce, about how stressful it was, and about how awful Richard was being throughout it all. They got back in town November 18th. One of her friends gives her a ride home. She gets home around 7 p.m. In the house that night are her 3 children, their live-in nanny Marie, Richard, and now Helle. At 3:30 in the middle of the night, the live-in nanny Marie is woken up by Richard, who tells her all the power in the house went out. He says, you and the kids need to go to my sister's house until I figure this out. He tells her Helle is already there to just take the kids and meet her there. And Marie is like, okay, I guess. She takes the 3 kids, they all get in the car. Richard drops him off at his sister's house, but Hal isn't there. Marie thought that it was weird, but Richard just said that he didn't know where Hal was, and that was kind of that. Richard goes back to the house to figure out why the power had gone out. This is still in the middle of the night. Okay, kind of weird. Marie and the children stay at Richard's sister's house until 9 p.m. the next day. Richard then comes to pick them up, and they all go back to the house because the power is now fixed. However, Hal is still nowhere to be found, and Marie thinks that it's weird, but she also thinks that it's not really her place to ask. They're going through a messy divorce. There's already tension in the air. She decides to just drop it. The next morning, the house phone rings. Marie picks it up. It's one of Hal's coworkers asking to speak to her. Marie says, oh, she's actually not here. I haven't seen her in a couple of days. I think that she might be out at work on a trip on a flight somewhere. And the coworker that was calling obviously worked with Hal. She was pretty sure that Hal didn't have any upcoming trips on her schedule. They were always usually on the same flights, and they had just been on a long flight, and they weren't scheduled to go on another one anytime soon. The friend is confused, and she gets sick to her stomach when she remembers a comment that Hal had made a few days prior when they were on their last trip together. Hal had told her, if something happens to me, do not assume that it was an accident. Later that night, Richard calls back the coworker himself, and he tells her, hey, I heard that you were asking about Hal. Well, her mom is actually very, very ill, and for the last 2 days, Hal has been in Denmark at home taking care of her mom. That's why you haven't heard from her. And the friend thought that it was really odd because they were close friends. She assumed that Hal would have told her if her mom really was ill, but she was just kind of like, all right, I guess. Now it is November 25th. The last time that anyone saw or heard from Hal was a week ago on the 18th. Hal's coworker and the nanny Marie had been communicating constantly because they were both suspicious. Something about Hal being MIA and Richard acting suspicious had them both questioning the whole thing. Marie then remembers that she had seen a big dark stain on the carpet in Richard's bedroom, but Richard then had all of the carpet removed and replaced in the bedroom. Massive red flag. The next day at work, all of Hal's coworkers see each other. They're all talking about how they're worried about Hal, and they're connecting the dots. It turns out that Hal had confided in more than one of them. She had made comments separately to them that if something happened to her, it was not an accident. So now they all come together and they start this mission of figuring out if Hal really is at Denmark taking care of her sick mom, or if this whole time she's just been missing. They get a hold of her mother. It took them a while to find the phone number, but when they finally speak to her, the coworkers realize that Richard has been lying. Hal's mom was not sick. She was not in Denmark. So where was she, and why had nobody heard from her? The coworkers confront Richard, who makes up another stupid lie. They don't believe him, so now they finally go to the police station and officially, for the first time, report Hal Crafts as missing. The police bring Richard in for questioning, who makes up yet another new stupid lie. He tells them that Hal actually ran away with a lover and that he was embarrassed that his wife left him for another man, which is why he was lying to her coworkers. But he says that he has no idea where she could be. Police aren't buying it. They get a hold of Richard's credit card records. They see some suspicious things. First of all, Richard had bought entirely new bedding. We know that there was a big dark stain on the carpet that he got rid of and replaced with new carpet. Also, since then, the nanny Marie had found a big stain on the mattress that literally looked like dry blood. And for some reason, she didn't tell anyone this. The only person that she told was Richard's sister, who also kept quiet about it. Now, Richard has replaced their entire bedding. And another weird thing leading up to Hal's disappearance was that Richard purchased a wood chipper, which again, police are seeing on his credit card records. First of all, what happened in the bedroom that he was trying to hide and clean up? Second of all, why would he need a wood chipper? Police are worried. They're working on getting a search warrant for his house. When they finally get the warrant, Richard, the nanny, and the kids are in Florida. They had gone to Florida for Christmas. So on Christmas Day, authorities go inside the house and they search it with the warrant while the house is empty, and they find the big stain on the mattress. The next day, they get a call from a man. He was a snowplower and he usually worked night shifts near a local lake. He was calling to say that around the time that Hal disappeared, he remembers seeing a man around 4 a.m. using a wood chipper near that lake. He remembers thinking that was really weird because he was using a wood chipper at 4 a.m. Officers go down to that particular area in the lake. They tape it off and they start searching. They are finding scraps of wood, scraps of paper. They start putting these pieces of paper together and they see they have some writing on them, and one specifically was from a letter addressed to Hal Crafts. Now, obviously, this is a crime scene because it's tying in the disappearance of Hal to this lake and this wood chipper. Investigators really believe that Richard Crafts murdered his wife, put her body through the wood chipper to get rid of it, and faced it towards the lake so that her body parts could be sprayed out onto the water. After spending so much time searching that massive lake, the dive teams found a human tooth, a piece of human skull, 60 other small bone fragments, 2,260 long blonde hairs, 3 ounces worth of human tissue pieces, and a tip of a human finger with red nail polish on the fingernail. Testing that tip of the finger with red nail polish they found at the lake and comparing it to red nail polish found inside Hal's bathroom. Back at her house, they find that the nail polish was an exact match. match. Testing the tooth they found in the lake, comparing it to dental records, they found that tooth did belong to Hal Crafts. They also found a piece of a chainsaw in the lake, and they were able to trace back the documents to find out that that specific chainsaw had a warranty, and the person who had signed for that warranty was Richard Crafts. With all of that evidence, on January 13th, Richard Crafts was arrested on suspicion of the murder of his wife. His murder trial began in May of 1988 in New London. In the trial, it was revealed that leading up to November 18th, which is when we suspect that he committed this murder, Richard had bought a truck, a large freezer, and that large wood chipper. He then waited for Hel to get home from her trip. When she did, they started arguing immediately. They argued all throughout the night, and it is very highly believed that Richard Crafts then attacked Hel while her back was facing him using a big flashlight over the head, and police think that it was that blunt force trauma to the head that killed her. It is believed that he then dragged her body downstairs into the garage, into that freezer, waiting a few hours until he eventually woke up Marie and the kids in the middle of the night because the power went out, took them to his sister's house, came back to the house, grabbed his wife's frozen body, dismembered it using that chainsaw, put the pieces back in the freezer, later fixed the power, went to go pick up Marie and the kids, brought them back to the house, waited until they fell asleep, took the pickup truck with the freezer and the wood chipper in the back, drove to the lake, pointed the wood chipper to the water, and put his wife's frozen body parts through it. That is what police highly believed happened. However, we don't really know because throughout the entire trial, Richard was maintaining his innocence. He pled not guilty, claiming that he did not do this. The jury deliberated for 17 days, but they could not come to a decision. I don't know how. The trial was declared a mistrial. They ended up having to have a second trial, but eventually Richard was found guilty. He was sentenced to 50 years in prison, but he only served 30 years and then he was released. He was 82 years old when he was released on January 30th of 2020, and he is still alive. As far as I could tell, the last that I could find was that he was living at a halfway house, but like I'm pretty sure he's still alive, just out there somewhere, after killing his wife and putting her body through a wood chipper. That is all I have on the story of Hel Crafts. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to her story and spending time with me today. I hope you guys are all having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. I love you all so much. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.